Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on the video. Today I'm going to take a look at managing software on your Ubuntu-based Linux system. And this refers to Ubuntu proper, also Linux Mint, Elementary OS, Zorin, any of the official spins of Ubuntu like Lubuntu or Xubuntu or Ubuntu Gnome or Ubuntu Mate. It all applies. Most people who come to Linux for the first time these days are running some sort of Ubuntu-based system. So we're going to talk about how you find software, how you install it, and how you remove software once you're done with it. So that's what we're doing today. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. First of all, there are some nifty tools that come installed. This is Linux Mint 17.3. So we're going to take a look at those, and we're going to discuss some basics as we roll along. We're going to open up the software manager for Linux Mint, which is a nice graphic environment that will allow you to find software on your system and install it. And then the next thing that we're going to take a look at here is just type in soft, and if you type it in right, it works best. The software sources we're going to talk about first here, because the first thing that you need to understand is that Linux is very different from what you might be used to if you're a Windows user, let's say, or even a Mac user. Most of the software that comes on your Linux system comes from what are called repositories. Repositories are web pages that hold a collection of software that will work with your particular distribution of Linux. In the case of Ubuntu, there are a lot of other projects that actually use the Ubuntu repositories as a base, and then they build on top of them to make whatever version of Linux they want to out of that. These are called Ubuntu-based distributions of Linux. This is perfectly okay, because in the open source community, it's all right to take somebody else's work and then build on it and make your own thing, okay? In the case of Linux Mint, it's almost these days not based on Ubuntu as much as it is developed alongside Ubuntu, because Mint offers their own repositories that hold a lot of software as well. So when you search for software on Linux Mint, you may get it from the Mint repositories, or you may get it from the Ubuntu repositories. And we're talking about a lot of software. We're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50,000 applications. So you need tools to be able to manage that, and the entire Debian Ubuntu ecosystem, you may know Ubuntu is based on another distribution of Linux called Debian, one of the oldest distributions of Linux. They share, the common thing that they all share is the same tools used to manage software, which is called apt tools. So all of these lovely little graphical things that we're looking at are actually just front ends for the apt system, and they allow us to point and click and make it work. The way a distribution of Linux handles software is really the big difference between all the big distributions. So you have the Debian way of doing things, the Ubuntu way of doing things, which is slightly different from Debian, even though they're related. And then you have OpenSUSE. They have their own tools. Arch Linux has its own tools, and Fedora has its own tools, and so forth. But the basic concepts of how they work are pretty much the same. So if you master dealing with software in Ubuntu and Linux Mint or any of the Ubuntu derivatives, then you're going to be able to switch to a new distribution pretty easily, because it's all doing kind of the same thing, okay? So this is one of the reasons that I always encourage people to dig a little bit deeper than the graphical tools. Learn how this works, and then you can apply that knowledge to other systems, even though you might be using different tools. Okay, so first we need to talk about repositories a little bit so that you understand. In Windows, if you are going to install a piece of software, you go on the internet, you download an installer package, usually from the developer's website, or maybe there's a bunch of websites that do nothing but host downloadable software, wherever you get it, and you install it on your system. The only problem with that is, in Windows, is that when you get that exe or MSI file and you click on it, unless you're absolutely 100% sure where it came from, you don't know what might be included with it. And that's the crapware and the malware and the junkware that you can get if you download a program from the wrong site. So in the Linux world, it makes it a bit more secure to get things from the official repositories. The repositories are hosted on servers. The distribution itself usually has a set of these servers that they work with, and then since most of them are non-profit organizations, other institutions around the world, like educational institutions, certain corporations that use Linux a lot, they offer a little bit of their web hosting space, a little bit of their bandwidth, and they allow the distribution to set up a mirror on their local website. And this is great because depending on where you are in the world, chances are you're pretty close to one of these mirrors. In the case of Linux Mint, usually when you install it, the first repositories that are mapped into the system are the standard ones. So it'd be like linuxmint.com, and then it would be for the Ubuntu stuff that you need to get for Linux Mint, it would be hooked up to the UK Ubuntu repositories. Not so great if you're living in the United States. You want to be a little bit closer. So Mint offers this wonderful tool that allows you to find a mirror close to you. And it works very simply. You just click on it and it generates a list of mirrors. And with 17.3 we have some new tools that we get a list of mirrors that should be local to us. In other words, it knows where you are, so it tries to find mirrors that might work best for you. And then you just click on one of these, in my case James Madison University, and you map it into the system. You're done. Do the same thing for Ubuntu. You're done. With Ubuntu proper, you really don't need to mess around with finding a mirror. Ubuntu does it a little bit differently. Canonical, the company that provides Ubuntu for download, buys some data center space, and so they have US archives. So most of the time, most people who run Ubuntu don't ever have to mess with this, and they can just leave it the way it's already set up. So this is Linux Mint specific, and some other spins of Ubuntu also have, you can find a mirror and that sort of thing. And if you're going to be using anything like Arch Linux or Fedora, this is something that you definitely want to know about, is finding the local mirror. So that's cool. So those are the main repositories. One of the really groovy things about the Ubuntu system, and one of the reasons that I prefer to use it over anything else on my own personal computers, is the fact that you can also get things from what are known as PPAs. A PPA is a private program archive or a private package archive. We'll talk a little bit more about what a package is later on, but it's basically the same thing. It's just it allows developers to post their software for download into an Ubuntu system without having to get into the main repository. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. It could be that the developer just, he's working on getting it in the repository, but the maintainers at Canonical, they're waiting for the next issue to put it, the next issued release to put it into. It could be that the developer wants to make sure that you have access to the most recent version of the software. So like in your, the Ubuntu repository may have an older version, but he's got a newer one available, so you could install his PPA and the system will go, oh, there's a newer piece of software over here, let's get this one. The other reason that they might want to do that is because their software may contain some proprietary code of some sort, or something that for whatever reason Ubuntu does not want to add to the repository, and so therefore they have to host it on their own if they want to put it on your system, that sort of thing. Some legal things get involved there, and so those are the reasons. PPAs are very groovy because they certainly do allow you to get a hold of the latest software, but there are a few dangers with them. Number one, the first danger is if it's an untrusted PPA, in other words, you don't know a whole lot about the developer, they could put a piece of software in there that could break your system, or even worse yet, they could put a piece of software in there that might link you to some malware or something like that. Now that's very rare, but it's definitely a possibility. And most people who will be installing PPAs are going to be installing trusted PPAs anyway. Okay? So, the other thing that happens with PPAs that you have to be aware of is because they are privately maintained, a developer may stop maintaining his software. He may not offer any more updates, or one day the PPA just may go away. That can happen, and it does, as a matter of fact. So, be careful with PPAs, but don't be too afraid of them either, because they're pretty easy to work with. In Linux Mint, you get this groovy piece of software here, and it is called the Software Manager. It is a graphical piece of software that looks in the Mint repositories and the Ubuntu repositories, and so you can just search for a piece of software. So let's search for the mail client GDebbie, and here it comes. It's going to pop up here, and if we click on GDebbie, it's going to tell us more about it. Alright, it takes it just a second to go out and get the information. There it is. And it's already installed on my system, but it would say install here. We could just click install. So with Linux Mint, once you get your sources set up, you could just click to your heart's content and install whatever you like from whatever repositories and archives you have hooked up to the system. You're good to go. So what we're going to do to learn some more advanced things is we're going to jump over here to Ubuntu proper. This is Ubuntu 14.04, and this is a virtual machine that I installed just today. So I actually have to install some software here to make this useful, and I figured that this would be a good time to show you some more advanced ways of doing this. Ubuntu ships with an application called Software Center, and Software Center is the default way to install software on Ubuntu. This piece of software is not the greatest in the world. Even Ubuntu acknowledges that themselves. And right now they're saying that when the new long-term support release 16.04 comes out, they're going to replace this software with another piece of software that's simply called software. Software, the piece of software, is part of the GNOME desktop environment and is something new from them, and it's very well received. It's available on other distributions. Fedora makes use of it, for instance, and I've played with it a little bit. It's pretty groovy. So I'm kind of hoping that they do get that into 16.04, but we'll have to wait and see as of the recording of this video. The Software Center works pretty much like Software Manager that I just showed you. We can do a search for an application. So let's install one application from here. I'm going to install an application called Synaptic, and I need to type that in correctly or it's not going to be able to find it. So it's S-Y-N-A-P-T, and it's the first thing up here, so I've typed enough. And we'll go ahead and look at more info here. More info on Synaptic Package Manager. This is a piece of software that's been in the Linux world for a long time. I've done a video on how to use this, but I'm going to show you a little bit about it here so it's all in one place. And this is a way of managing software for Linux that's a little bit more intense, a little bit more advanced, and it offers some pretty groovy tools that you can use. So let's go ahead and install Synaptic and get that on the system so we can open it up. It's Synaptic Package Manager. So what is a package? A package is a file, basically, that holds all of the information about a program. It can contain all of the information necessary, all of the binary code to run it, or in the Linux world, developers can take their code and add that in with other code that's already available in the repository in other packages. So those sorts of things, they create what is known as a dependency. So to run this piece of software, you may need other software that's in the repositories, and the apt package manager, the back end for all this wonderful point and click stuff we're using, keeps track of that. And so if a piece of software needs another piece of software, it'll go out and try and find it. There are also packages which are known as meta packages, and they don't really contain any code. They just contain a list of other packages to install. So if you were going to install, let's say, a big desktop environment on your Linux system, then you would download a meta package, and the meta package would go and get everything it needs to install that desktop environment. So let's go ahead and open up Synaptic. Yes, this is not the first take of this video, which is the reason why it was already available in the dash. And I'll show you a little bit about that. And we're actually going to install a few other things using Synaptic Package Manager so I can give you a basic idea of how it works. So when you install it, it shows you every package that's available in your system for everything. Package files most of the time are the same name of the program, but not always. For instance, there is a little program that comes with most GNOME desktop applications called Videos. It comes with Ubuntu, and it's for playing back audio and video files. The actual package name for that piece of software is Totem. There's another one called Disk Usage Analyzer. The name of the package is Baobab. So sometimes when you're using Synaptic, you may type in something and nothing comes up. Make sure that when you do the search that you're having it search in the description name and all of that stuff. That's usually set up by default, but that can cause you a little confusion sometimes. So usually just doing a search on the web, like what's the package name for this, will give you the exact syntax and you can do a search for it and find it here. It's something to keep in mind. So using Synaptic to install software is actually real easy. So I'm going to go to GDebbie. That's something that we're going to want. So I'm going to mark that for installation. And when it pops up here, let's see, it's ready to go. So the next piece of software I'm going to get is called HTOP. If you've watched my videos, you know that I always install HTOP on all of my Linux computers, even if they're virtual machines. And the next one that we're going to look for is BleachBit. And there it is. BleachBit is a program sort of like CCleaner for Windows that goes in and clears out all of the information. As a matter of fact, BleachBit is available for Windows. You know, cleans out all the junk files and things like that. So we have all of our software ready to go, and we click Apply, and it's going to give us a summary to let us know if there's any dependencies and what packages need to get installed. So there we go. And it's going to go and download and install the software. And most of the time it really does go that fast, depending on how fast your internet connection is. So all of that software is there and it's ready for us to use. So if I want to remove a piece of software, I'm going to take Thunderbird off of here, because that's a mail client that I'm not going to use. So we want to make sure it's gone and it's already uninstalled. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to mark this for installation. I uninstalled it in an earlier take of this video. I'm going to go ahead and install it because I want to show you a little feature here when you remove software using the Synaptic Package Manager that you won't necessarily get with Software Manager in Linux Mint or the Software Center in Ubuntu. It gives you some options. So I've just installed Thunderbird. Now I'm going to tell it I want to uninstall Thunderbird. And we can mark it for removal or mark it for complete removal. If we mark it for removal, it'll just remove the program itself. It'll leave behind all of the configuration files. If we mark it for complete removal, which is what we're going to do, it will take it off the system and take the configuration files with it. So if you want to remove a piece of software for some reason, but you think you might want to use it again, then use the just remove option. And if you want it to completely go away, you want to purge all of everything related to that piece of software, that's where you would do it. Synaptic Package Manager can also be used to update files on your system. You can do full system upgrades here. You can do all kinds of things. It's a wonderful piece of software, and I suggest that you play with it if you're not familiar with it already. So now I'm going to show you how to use the GDebbie Package Manager. We've talked about installing from the repositories. We've talked about using PPAs. What we haven't talked about is actually downloading a file onto your system and installing it. So we're going to use a piece of software called GDebbie to do that. This is installed by default with Linux Mint along with Synaptic Package Manager and many other Ubuntu-based systems. You will find that this is already installed. I had to install it because in Ubuntu proper it doesn't. And that's not what I wanted. See, I was thinking GDebbie. What I wanted was Google Chrome. Let's go ahead and search for that, because what we're going to do, we're going to go to the Google Chrome page here, and we are going to download Google Chrome in a file that we can use to install on our system. A lot of proprietary software like Google Chrome, which is a proprietary piece of software, comes to you in files called deb files in the Ubuntu and Debian world. And you will actually download these on your system and you will install them, sort of like installing an exe file, but we need a piece of software to do that for us. The default in Ubuntu is the Software Center. It's very slow and clunky installing deb files, so I don't like to use that, okay? And you need to choose the right one. For Ubuntu, we want a 64-bit deb, because this is a 64-bit system. An interesting note here is that Google Chrome, as of March 2016, is not going to offer 32-bit versions of Google Chrome. And that's going to suck if you run a 32-bit version of Linux. But I suggest that you check out the Chromium browser, which is the open source version of Google Chrome. They intend to keep offering a 32-bit version. So we're going to accept the terms and conditions. Remember, this is proprietary software. And it's going to offer to save the file or open it with the Ubuntu Software Center. You could also choose open with other here. Let's see if it gives us GDebbie by default. No, it doesn't, so we're not going to use that option. No, ma'am, we're not going to do that. We want to save the file. I'm not actually going to save the file. If I'd click it, it would put it in my downloads folder. It's already here. So we can do it from there. So once you have your file downloaded that you want to install, other pieces of software like that, there's some video editors that install through deb files. Another one would be TeamViewer. These are all proprietary things for Linux. Some games install that way. Go to Downloads. There's our file. I'm going to click Open With, and I'm going to choose GDebbie. And probably be best if you guys were watching this in high definition. So I'm going to open that with GDebbie, and it is currently analyzing the Google Chrome stable file there. It's going to look and see if there's any dependencies. There should be actually a couple of dependencies that it needs to satisfy. And once it gets there, it says all dependencies are satisfied. That's good. I installed this once before in a past take of the video. Usually it comes up and it says that it needs to download some stuff. Let's go ahead and do that to install the package. Put in your password there, and yes, that is my fan spinning up because this virtual machine is working hard to install this package, and we're recording video on the same machine. And it doesn't like it. So now it's installing the package. This computer is actually usually very, very quiet. It's a Dell Inspiron that I've had for a long, long time, and I've done a lot of these videos on it. But boy, if you hit that CPU hard enough, those fans spin up and it sounds like one of those great big servers. So our package is now installed. And it's just setting everything up. And then it'll tell us when it's done. And now we have it installed, and it gives us all kinds of options. We can download the package again if we want to, get a fresher version, reinstall, or remove. So GDebbie is a very nice tool to have around, that is for sure. Okay, so now we want to move on to some more complex things. We talked about PPAs earlier. What about adding a PPA? Well, we're going to do that right now. And we're going to do it through the terminal. I have found that it's easier to do that through a terminal than anywhere else. So what we want to do is I want to put Java Ubuntu PPA. Because we're going to put real Java on this machine. And if we go to Web Update, the first thing you're going to see is launchpad.net, and that is the actual PPA itself. That's where it's hosted. We don't want that. What we want is Ubuntu Updates PPA Web Update Java. Okay. And no, maybe we didn't want that one at all. I haven't done this in a while. That's not on the Ubuntu Updates site. Maybe we need the Ubuntu Updates site, so, or rather the Web Updates site. Go back to the search results. Here we go. This is the one I wanted. You'll find a lot of references to PPAs, especially big PPAs like this one, ones that are very well trusted, which is exactly what you want to see. So if you don't find what you're looking for, just keep clicking. I know this one is hosted by Web Update. So we want to install our PPA, and we're going to grab some code here off of the page, and we're going to copy that in, and then we're going to go open up a terminal, and that is the Linux Mint terminal. This is a virtual machine. I want the Ubuntu terminal. There we go. And I have already set the fonts up nice and big for us. So we're going to paste that code that we got off of the developer's web page, which in this case is Web Update. And we'll go through this command and talk a little bit about what it does. Sudo add-apt-repository PPA. There we go. Put my password in and shut my phone up. There we go. Oop. I did that wrong. Do that again. Okay, so at first it's going to confirm that we actually want to add the PPA. We say yes. PPA is now in our system. We can confirm that by opening up a program called Software Sources. So let's go to Software Sources. Look at other software. I've also hooked up the Canonical Partners repository here as well. So let's see here. Yes, our PPA is in the system. Also, when I installed Google Chrome, it put Google's repository in there as well. And my phone is going nuts, man. You hear that? Telemarketers call, and if you don't answer it, it gets the answering machine, and then they hang up, and then it does that. I hate telemarketers. Anyway, our PPA is here, so we're good to go. So what's the next step? Our PPA is hooked up, but the system doesn't know that the software is there. So what we need to do is we're going to run sudo apt update, and the system is going to go out and it's going to go through all of the repositories that are hooked up and make sure that it knows where all the software is. That's what this is doing. You can also do the same thing with a command using an older tool called apt-get. So this might get a little confusing to some people, but there's the apt tool, which is actually the later version, and then there's apt-get. And they both kind of do the same thing. Apt is more simplified. Apt-get is an older tool. And a lot of times you'll see that people will tell you to use apt-get. So that's why we have this code here that says sudo apt-get update. Well, I already did that. So the next thing we want to do is install our package. So you can just copy this code here, okay? And then we can paste this in, and I could just hit enter, and it would do it. However, once you have your PPA hooked up, and once you know that the system is all updated, then guess what? This will appear in Synaptic Package Manager or Software Center. So you could go through and you could add a bunch of PPAs, go boom, 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 and have them all on a list, then update the system. And then you could run the Synaptic, and the package name that we're looking for is Oracle Java 9 Installer, which is the latest version, I'm assuming. So we're going to do a search for, just do a search for Oracle Java, and there it is. So it's recommending the Java 9 installer, and I can mark that for installation, and then it says that it needs to get a dependency. So there you go. But I'm going to do it from the terminal so I can show you guys something, if you should happen to want to install real Java on your machine. Oops. Go back here and put an S on the front of it. There is no command udo. Alright, I'm going to tell it yes. And it's going to pop up this thing here where I have to agree to the EULA. We are once again installing proprietary software on our system, so that's the deal with that. And then Java is going to install on our Ubuntu system. And that's a pretty good overview with a few little glitches along the way of how you manage software on an Ubuntu-based system. And actually, I think I'm running Java 8 on my other systems. While this is doing that, we can check that out real quick. You don't mind hanging out for a bit and seeing what the deal is with that, do you? Let's go here, and we'll open up Synaptic. If I type it in correctly, it'll work, right? Okay, so I want to go in here. I want to see what version of Java I have installed. Do a search for Oracle Java. Look on the list. And yes, we have 8 installed. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to make use of the coolness of Synaptic Package Manager right now. I am going to mark this for removal. Now I'm going to mark this one for installation. And I'm going to swap out the older version for the newer version. So just click Apply. Tell it to go out there. It's going to go get the package. It's going to start installing it. Now you can see how we do EULAs in Synaptic, so I'm glad you hung around. And it's going to go through and install this. While this is doing this, we'll jump over here to Ubuntu and see where we're at in that. I think that's about done. So that is done. So let me exit there. Jump back over to our main desktop where we have our installation in progress. It may not prompt me for the EULA because I have already agreed to it with the last installer, so we'll see what it does here. Well, I guess not, because it's installing the new Java right now, and we can see that happening in the terminal here for Synaptic, so it's not going to prompt me again. But what's really cool is that in Synaptic Package Manager, it'll open up a little box, and the little box will say, this software wants you to agree. Do you agree? Click Done. So if you're, and it usually, if you're installing a bunch of software, it will do it all in one big, it'll do them one right after the other. This is one of the reasons that once you get used to doing this, it is so easy to set up a Linux system. If you know the software that you need, you can just install these tools, put all the software in that you need. You can even write scripts for Synaptic that will do this all at once. So all of the software is already stored in a file, and you just open the file in Synaptic and it goes out and does all of this operation automatically. That's one of the reasons, like I said, that you can spin up a Linux system very quickly. So while my Java update installs here, gang, I'm going to wave bye-bye, and I'm going to thank you for watching this rather long video and putting up with the phone calls and the mishaps as it rolls along. That just seems to be how my videos happen. Be sure and check out freedompenguin.com. Check out Easy Linux on the web at easylinux.com, and check it out on Facebook. Give it a like if you would too. At Freedom Penguin, you're going to find lots of really groovy articles about Linux, including a lot from me. I contribute to that site, and from other folks as well. So thank you for watching. We will talk again soon.